Hello, crypto boys and ghouls, and welcome back to the channel, Tales from the Cryptmancer, where we feature content on play-to-earn games on the blockchain, such as Splinterlands. And in today's video, I wanted to revisit the Riftwatcher Summoners after playing many hundreds of battles this last season on my Climb the Champion and playing with them primarily in the Diamond League. I wanted to bring to you my summoner rankings, my meta team comps, and strategies. And I think this will be helpful discussion for the community as we talk about how these summoners can be used and some of the valuable cards and team comps that come with them. So without further ado, let's hop into the rankings as well as the strategies and team comps. And I'm going to start with my number one summoner for Riftwatchers, and that is Gore. Gore is by far, in my opinion, the best summoner here in the Riftwatcher set, and it's probably not even close. She really excels in Noxious Fume battles, but is also very useful in Earthquake, explosive weaponry, as well as equal opportunity and super sneak rule set scenarios. And one of the strongest teams that you'll find right now probably is a team that Bulldog had featured in a recent video, and that's the Coral Lurker Taunt team. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below in case you're interested. But generally speaking, the ideal monsters that you want to use with Gore are those that have high health, high damage, high speed, low armor, Bloodlust, Retaliate, or Last Stand. Some form of these attributes or abilities are going to be very useful for monsters that you bring to use with Gore. And from a tank perspective, I've got a number of tanks that you can use here, and some of these just become quite ridiculous when you use them with Gore, because the Enrage ability essentially increases their melee attack damage and their speed, making some of these monsters just crazy strong tanks. For example, the Coral Lurker, once it gets enraged, is without any modifiers or any other things, is going to go to 6 speed with 8 damage, plus thorns, plus phase, plus dodge, and taunt. Just a beast of a card. And imagine bringing an enraged Almo with you any battle that you wanted. That's how good Gore is. When Almo gets enraged, it gets to 9 speed with, less than 16 health at that point once it's enraged, but it has immunity, it has phase, it has return fire and magic reflect. Just becomes a beast of a tank. Of course, you have Hydra here as well. It goes up to 6 damage and 6 speed. With the thorns, retaliate, the trample, and the self-heal, can kind of go in and out of enrage as it needs to. And the Goblin Mech here as well just becomes a beast. Goes up to 5 speed with 9 melee damage here with piercing and stun. That's quite strong. Grum here also gets crazy damage here. It's going to go to roughly 8 damage here with Giant Killer, Void Armor, and Void, so it becomes very strong as well with its Bloodlust. Basically, if it gets 1 kill, wow, it's off to the races. Good luck stopping Grum at that point. Even the Charlock Minotaur, wow, when's the last time you've seen this card used in a battle? It, with Gore, gets up to 8 melee damage with True Strike and Retaliate with a decent health pool, so not terrible. Servant of the Flame here, I think, is a underdog winner here when it comes to Gore. Once it gets enraged here, it's going to go up to 9 speed. It's going to have 5 melee damage with Retaliate, Poison, and Pierce. That's crazy good, and it also has a decent health pool to work with. Forgotten One, its damage is going to go to 9 damage with Piercing, Retaliate, and Immunity. And Cerberus as well, it's going to go to 6 melee damage with 8 speed, a self-heal, and Retaliate. And last but certainly not least, yes, I put him on here because this card is actually good. Don't knock the Venari Heatsmith. Venari Heatsmith is actually pretty good, even as a 3-mana low mana tank for just general fire teams when you need a cheap tank and Chaos Agent isn't going to cut it. But the Venari Heatsmith here, under Scargore, once it gets damaged, now it doesn't have a huge health pool, but once it does get damaged, it's going to go to 8 speed, and that's really good. 8 speed amplified tank with Thorns at 3 mana. Yeah, that's a good value in my mind. So you can see here the tanks become super strong under Scargore. If we look at the off tanks here, wow, some of these are nice. Phineas Rage, 6 melee damage, 9 speed with Retaliate and Oppress as an off tank, and even the new Junker becomes respectable here, especially if it's repairing something like a tank like Grum Flameblade or a Goblin Mech perhaps, or even the Venari Heatsmith here. It's going to have 6 melee damage and 6 speed with 9 health and repair. So Junker becomes a decent off tank, even probably better than obviously normal. And then from a mid DPS perspective, if you use the Sandworm in like a Noxious Fumes or especially an Earthquake battle, because it also has Snare at the highest level, look out. The damage is going to go to 11 damage at 6 speed. That's crazy with piercing. Look out. As long as you don't have Force Field, you're going to be in trouble there. And for sneak protectors here, there's some great sneak protectors you can use with Scargore here. The Ash Mirage, new with the Riftwatcher sets, once it gets damaged here, it's going to go to 9 speed. 9 speed and 4 archery damage at the back of your lineup is really, really good. And then Elemental Phoenix at the highest levels, it's going to have 8 speed with dodge, throwing down range 4 blast magic damage. Yeah, that's really good as well. The Tenny Striker, also very strong, gets up to 8 melee damage with 6 speed and dodge and backfire. Yeah, that's very good as well. A Freed Elder, when you combine Last Stand with Enrage, gets a little ridiculous if it can survive long enough to get to the front. And then Tinderlock as well, with Enrage and Last Stand combined, gets pretty crazy. So yeah, Scargore for me, hands down, the best all-around summoner for Riftwatchers for just bringing out beastly teams. You don't even have to use it in Noxious Fumes or Earthquake or explosive weaponry scenarios. You can pretty much use it all the time because, well, eventually the whole point of your opponent is to damage your team. And once they do, wow, you will not like Scargore and her team when she gets angry. She becomes really something of a just a crazy team. So definitely recommend Scargore as my #1 Riftwatcher summoner. Now, #2, Vespa here. Vespa is really, I would say, a balanced summoner. The strategy you want to use with Vespa is you want to make magic susceptible speed tanks and off tanks more generally playable against diverse opponents. So just giving you more flexibility. So rule sets that Vespa will be excelling at include Armored Up, Back to Basics, Keep Your Distance, as well as Target Practice, Aim True, and Spreading Fury. And the tanks that are going to work well with Vespa are going to be generally tanks that either don't have a large health pool or don't have any phase or void or void armor, but have a decent amount of speed. So those tanks are going to be the Coral Lurker, the Cockatrice, the Phantom of the Abyss, Serpent of Eld, the Kraken, Kelp Initiate, Dragon Spirit as well. You don't see this card used a lot, but 6 speed, 3 mana. So you can use actually a low mana dragon team here using cards like the Dragon Spirit, the Whelp Herder, the Dhampir Infiltrator. There's a lot more lower mana dragon cards that you can bring to bear with a team like Vespa that become quite good. You've got Serpent of the Flame, Serpentine Soldier, Cerberus, Phineas Rage, Venari Knifer, Vampire Bat, and Regal Parrington. All of these become very viable tanks for your splinters when you use Vespa, and when you believe that your opponent will have a tendency to use some magic damage for its team composition. So, normally you probably would be hesitant to bring things like Phantom of the Abyss as a frontline tank, or Cockatrice, or Vampire Bats, or Venari Knifer, or Regal Parrington, Serpentine Soldier, these types of tanks, because you just are afraid that, hey, if my opponent brings magic, I'm just donezo, and it's not going to end well. Well, now with Vespa, you can kind of have some, I would say, confidence that these tanks, when you bring them, are going to do their job and not just get wiped off the board in the first turn. So that's the benefit that Vespa gives you. Now for off tanks here, great off tanks to use with Vespa would include Flying Squid, Electric Eels, the Volguin, Shadow Snitch. You're not going to see that very often, but you will here with Vespa because it has dodge and decent speed. And then you got Phineas Rage and the Elemental Phoenix here. Now coming in at number 3 for me for the Riftwatcher Summoners is going to be Elthane. Elthane, generally speaking, is just a better base summoner to use for Chaos Legion or modern battles than General Sloan. That's why it's probably number 3 on my ranking here, just because, well, it's the best case scenario if you want to use Chaos Legion or modern summoners and you don't have Untamed. So for Elthane, again, the strategy here, you want to take advantage of Amplify and Magic Reflect, really to make a well-rounded team. It's going to be useful in rule sets to use Elthane-led life teams with scenarios such as Close Range, Aim True, Target Practice, Lost Magic, Weak Magic, and Keep Your Distance. All of these are going to lend to more archery units being used, which means more return fire for you to take advantage of. Now, from a tank perspective, what you're going to look to run primarily to take advantage of Elthane are going to be tanks like Pelacor Conjurer, Zenith Monk, Blinding Reflector, the Prismatic Energy, and the Silver Shield Paladin. Many of these have Magic Reflect already built in, or are durable that have good health, shield, speed, or self-heal, for example. So these are going to be good tanks to use, coupled with Amplify and that return fire. Now, from an off-tank perspective, one that kind of jumps off the page as a nice off-tank to use with Elthane is Venator Kinjo. It gives you the Amplify and the Reflect Shield, as well as Slow at the highest levels. So a cheap 2-mana, great addition for Elthane-based teams. Now, my 4th rated summoner here is going to be Fernhardt. Fernhardt is useful in rule sets such as Lost Magic, Keep Your Distance, Back to Basics, and Aim True. And generally speaking, where you'll probably get the most benefit out of Fernhardt is when you think you're going to face Mylor. So it's really a hard counter to Mylor. And the tanks that are really good under Fernhardt are going to be the War Chang and Cornealis, although you can certainly use any other standard melee-based kind of earth tanks, which there's certainly quite a lot to choose from, honestly, that work really well. Now, from an off-tank perspective, options that come into play for Fernhardt-led teams include the Earth Elemental and certainly the new Riftwatcher card, Bramble Pixie, with that reach and self-heal. And then from a mid DPS perspective, you've got cards like Eyes of the Fanged and Venari Seedsmith that come to life under Fernhardt for a low to mid mana level DPS that really is very cost effective. And Runemancer Flore here is also very, very strong as a mid DPS card under Fernhardt. And for your backline DPS or backline sneak protectors, cards that you would consider using here would be the Javelin Thrower, Spirit of the Forest, and the Acid Shooter. These are all definitely very good options for Fernhardt. Now, number 5 for me is Aquatis. I know others like Aquatis more than myself. For me, honestly, I would just rather use Kelia 99% of the time over Aquatis. That's just me for the mana. I think Kelia is better, generally speaking. But for Aquatis, it's really a good situational play. For example, in the Spreading Fury rule set, you can take advantage of the doubling of your, well, not the doubling, but the increase of your speed, because that speed differential versus other slower teams can give you a dodge advantage, mathematically speaking, which is going to proc that backfire much more than normal on Aquatis. So ideal monsters that you would like to use with Aquatis in a team here would be high speed monsters, high base speed monsters, or abilities that include dodge, blind, or phase. So tanks that you'd want to consider using with an Aquatis team, especially in the Spreading Fury rule set, would be the Coral Lurker, Almocambio, the Hydra, Chaos Agent, Kraken, Genoshanis, the Serpent of Eld, and the Kelp Initiate, because all of these tanks have great speed to start with, and coupled with their other abilities, adding backfire to that just gives you extra DPS potentially. Now for off tanks here, you gotta like the Flying Squid with the blind ability here. Also Electric Eels, Genoshanis once again as an off tank, the Junker and the Tidebiter are all very viable off tanks to consider for Aquatis-led teams. And for mid DPS, Spirit Miner with the swiftness, the dodge, and the blind is a perfect card for Aquatis. The Axemaster as well, really strong DPS with decent speed there. And the Mischievous Mermaid here with the dodge and the 4-speed as well becomes valuable under Aquatis-led teams. Now, for your sneak protectors here, you've got Phantom of the Abyss, and of course, again, Genoshanis, the legendary reward card that keeps popping up in team compositions, well, because he's just good with the force field, the phase, the void, and the high speed and the high health. Then you've also got cards like Water Elemental with good speed and dodge and a self-heal, the Kelp Initiate again, and the Cockatrice for that 2-mana kind of meddlesome, annoying backline protector there that you can sneak in there. No pun intended. Now, the last summoner here for Riftwatchers is, well, it's poor old Darwin here. And I got to be honest with you, I haven't really used Darwin that much because, well, unless someone can prove me wrong, I think he's kind of dog water and not really a fan of Darwin and his ability. I would love to see a good use case for Darwin and a reason to use him over some of the other modern summoners like Thaddeus Brood or even Ouster as an example. I just don't see a reason to ever use this card for the most part. I mean, there are situational use cases where he would be valuable, but yeah, I mean, unless you're just looking for a cheap summoner for Riftwatchers, he's in my mind the Vera Salacia of Riftwatchers. Useful for scenarios like Armored Up, Lost Magic, or Weak Magic. The use cases that you would really see Darwin probably do best at are going against a life sustain counter like a Shield Bearer based team or a Kraken Turtle team where you're going to have a lot of attacks on that Kraken and you're going to want to take its health pulled down so it can't heal. It can be useful against shielded teams like Peak Rider, Kelia, Grandmaster Wraith, Tyrus, or the Drake of Arnok, but generally speaking, magic DPS is usually a better job against all of the above other than Grandmaster Wraith. Now, you can also use it kind of in the meta perspective, thinking that, hey, if in these armored up scenarios, I'm going to see a magic-based team, then you can use Darwin, for example, as a counter to their counter, basically to throw something else besides magic damage at them in case they don't use a magic team and they go heavy on the shields. But that's kind of high meta analysis and it's very situational, so probably not a great use case here for Darwin, generally speaking. So there it is, my summary of the Riftwatcher summoners, their ratings, their best teams. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Love to hear what the community has got cooking with Riftwatchers, and hopefully you're enjoying using these cards. I know I have. It's a great set, and it's been very fun playing new teams that have been introduced with these summoners and these new cards. Until next time, keep stacking those stats.